I want you to close your eyes for a second.
Huh.
Imagine you are standing in the center of a labyrinth. It's tight, it's chaotic, and your senses are essentially under siege. You smell dust, not just dirt, but that specific acrid smell of centuries-old brick dust.
That's a very particular smell.
It is. And you smell cardamom and frying oil, maybe a waft of open sewage, but then immediately the scent of jasmine and rosewater. You hear the roar of these little 70cc motorbikes, the call to prayer echoing from 3 different directions, the shouting of vendors. But then you look up, and above this chaotic modern noise, you see these silent, crumbling balconies looking down at you like heavy eyelids.
It's a sensory assault in the best possible way.
Yeah.
But what you're describing isn't just a marketplace. You're describing the walled city of Lahore. And those balconies you mentioned, that, I think, is where the real story lies.
Exactly. And that's what we're unpacking today. We're taking a deep dive into the walled city of Lahore in Pakistan. But we aren't doing the typical top 10 things to eat tour, though. I mean, the food is incredible.
Oh, it's legendary. But that's for another day.
All right. Today we're looking at a tale of 2 cities, really. On one side, you have the massive military grandeur of the Lahore Fort Strategic, imposing, built to keep people out. And on the other side, woven into those narrow alleys, you have the Havelis.
The private mansions, the hidden world.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting and honestly a little terrifying. Because while the fort is all about history and power, the Havelis, well, the sources we've got today paint a picture of architectural genius, tragic decay, and some seriously unsettling ghost stories.
And that contrast is exactly why this topic is so rich. We have a stack of sources here: architectural studies, travel guides, personal memoirs, and even some folklore collections. And our mission today is to look at these structures through a very specific lens: architectural anthropology.
Architectural anthropology.
Okay, now that sounds like a $10 term I'd use to impress people at a dinner party.
What?
But let's actually break that down before we jump in. What are we actually looking for? It sounds academic, but it's actually quite grounded. It's the idea that buildings aren't just bricks and mortar. They are physical representations of culture, of climate, of human behavior. A building tells you how people lived, what they feared, who they worshipped, and, how they handled the heat.
Okay, so it's like reading the biography of a culture, but the pages are made of stone and wood.
Exactly. And in the case of Lahore, these buildings are shedding light on the really turbulent history of the Sikh and Mughal eras.
So if the walls could talk, this is the language they're speaking.
Precisely. And in Lahore, they don't just talk, they whisper. And sometimes, as we'll find out later, they scream.
All right, let's start with the loud part of the city first, the muscle, the fortress on the hill.
Oh.
The Lahore Fort.
It is the anchor of the city. And to understand the fort, you have to understand the land. I mean, it's basic geography. If you look at a map, the fort sits on a hill overlooking the Ravi River. That is not an accident.
No, that screams strategic placement.
It's strategic mastery 101. It's the classic combination: high ground plus water access.
You see everything coming, and you control the water supply.
Exactly. You control the flow of goods, and you force anyone attacking you to fight gravity. The history here is incredibly deep. I mean, the origins of the walls go back to the 11th century, to the Ghaznavid Empire. But what we see today, the grandeur of it, that evolved through the Delhi Sultanate and really peaked with the Mughal Empire.
And the sources describe these defenses as incredibly sophisticated. It wasn't just a pile of rocks thrown together. This was engineering.
Oh, far from it. We're talking about layers. You have a base of limestone for stability, which is crucial. Then a core of brick, which acts as a kind of shock absorber.
For cannon fire, I'm guessing.
For cannon fire, for siege engines, absolutely. And then you have that iconic red sandstone outer layer.
That red color is so distinct. In photos, it almost looks like it's glowing at sunset.
It does, and that's a psychological choice. Red sandstone projects power. It looks fiery. It looks impenetrable. But it's the design of the walls themselves that is fascinating from a military perspective. They feature battlements and bastions.
Okay, break those down. Bastions are the parts that jut out from the main wall, right? Like big stone elbows.
That's a great way to put it. They are angular or circular projections, and they serve a very, very lethal purpose. If you have a flat wall, and I'm standing at the bottom trying to scale it with a ladder, you have to lean over the edge to shoot down at me, which exposes you.
Right, you become a target.
But with a bastion, you can stand in that projection and shoot sideways, along the face of the main wall at the person climbing it.
Ah, so you're flanking them. You're hitting them from the side while they're focused on going up.
It's called enfilading fire. It means there are no blind spots. If you try to climb that wall, you are getting shot at from 360 degrees. It's a killing field by design. And of course, you had the moat systems as the first line of defense, and watchtowers placed at just the right intervals for maximum visibility.
Nasty. Effective, but nasty. And the sources mention merlons and crenellations. That's the classic castle top look, right? The up and down bits.
It is, and it's pure function. The crenellations are the gaps you shoot through. The merlons are the solid, upright sections you hide behind. It's a rhythmic pattern of protection and aggression. Protection and aggression. It's architecture as warfare.
So it's a machine designed for war.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the gates, and this is what blew my mind reading through the travel guides. There are 13 gates, and they aren't just holes in the wall. They are like personality tests for the different emperors who built them.
That is a great way to put it. They are statements of power and identity. Take the Alamgiri Gate, for example, built by the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb in 1674.
The big one. So when you
Yes.
see on all the postcards facing the mosque.
The massive one. It faces the Badshahi Mosque, which he also built. The scale, the symmetry, the massive doors, it's all designed to impress, to awe. It represents a fusion of Islamic and Indian styles, and it's a very clear statement.
What's the statement?
The statement is, I am here and I am in charge. It physically aligns the power of the emperor directly with the power of God across the square at the mosque. It's a brilliant piece of urban planning as propaganda.
But then you have a gate like the Masti Gate, and the source points out something funny about the name. Masti implies fun or entertainment.
It does. Mischief or playfulness. And the architecture reflects that. It's known for its opulence. The carvings are incredibly intricate relief work, intaglio. There's a lot more artistic symbolism there. You see motifs like lotus flowers.
Which symbolize spiritual growth, purity, that sort of thing.
Right, exactly. The whole vibe is softer. It's more artistic than the raw military imposition of the Alamgiri Gate. It's trying to seduce you with its beauty rather than intimidate you with its scale.
And what about the Khizri Gate? That one had a more practical purpose, it seems.
Very practical. It's named after Saint Khwaja Khizri, who is the patron saint of rivers and waterways in Islamic folklore. This was the gate that provided access to the Ravi River. So it was used for controlling access to the royal quarters, for bringing in supplies by boat. It was a vital artery.
The service entrance, but for VIPs and vital goods.
In a way, yes. And speaking of VIPs, you have the Elephant Gate, the Hathi Pole.
I love this one. The pillars are so robust, the arches are bold. And the name isn't metaphorical.
No, it is entirely functional. It was designed specifically to accommodate royal elephants carrying the emperors. And you have to realize, we aren't talking about a guy riding a horse here. A full-grown royal elephant, fully caparisoned with silks and armor, carrying a howdah, that's the ornate carriage on top, is a massive logistical challenge.
It's like trying to drive a semi-truck through a Taco Bell drive-thru. You need clearance.
Exactly. You need a specific clearance height, usually 15 to 18 feet, and incredible structural integrity. A primary mode of transport that weighs 6 tons and is covered in jewels creates a lot of vibration and dynamic load. The Elephant Gate is built like a bunker because it had to support that very specific, very grand kind of traffic.
Sorry, your elephant is too tall for this gate. That's a problem you really don't want to have when the emperor's visiting.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a gate, it was a symbol. The elephant represents strength, wisdom, royalty. To enter through a gate built for elephants was to participate in that symbolism.
And then moving slightly later in history, you have the Lahore Gate. The sources say this is where you see the cultural layering really clearly.
It's a perfect example. It has the original Mughal ornate decorations, beautiful carvings, calligraphy, but the fortifications were modified by the Sikhs when they took over in the late 18th and early 19th centuries.
Because they had different military needs, different technology.
Exactly. The Mughals were dealing with one kind of warfare. The Sikhs were dealing with another, including the British. So they added their own battlements, reinforced certain sections. It's a palimpsest. You write over the history, but the old layers still show through if you know where to look.
And once you get past these gates, you're in the inner sanctum, the Diwani Kus.
Hall of Special Audience. This is where the emperor met with dignitaries, ambassadors, high-ranking officials. It's all white marble inlays, Pietrodura work, grandiose scale. It's meant to make you feel small and the emperor feel godlike.
Pure psychological theater.
It all is. The entire fort is. And the Shah Burj Gate, the royal connection, the imagery there is all about processions and jeweled elephants. It's pure propaganda in stone.
It really is. It's
Okay.
statecraft. But if the fort is about the state, about the emperor and the army, the Havelis are about the family. And that is a very, very different kind of architecture.
Completely different. A different universe, almost.
Let's pivot to that, because this is where that architectural anthropology you mentioned really kicks in. We have this academic study on traditional dwellings, and it defines the Haveli in a very specific way.
It does. The word itself comes from the Arabic hawali, which means partition or private space, and that definition drives the entire design philosophy. These houses are fundamentally inward-looking.
Which is the polar opposite of how we build houses in the West today, right? We want the big curb appeal, the big front lawn, the picture window. We want people to see our house.
Correct. A modern Western house is extroverted. A Haveli presents a high, blank wall to the street, maybe a heavy wooden door studded with iron, but that's it. It offers almost zero information to the outsider. It's all about privacy and security. The beauty, the life, the soul of the house is entirely hidden inside.
It's like a geode, just a boring rock on the outside, and then you crack it open, and it's full of sparkling crystals.
That's a perfect analogy. And the center of that crystal, the heart of the home, is the sahem.
The courtyard.
The courtyard. It's the central, open-to-sky space that everything else revolves around. In the joint family system, where you might have 3 or 4 generations living together under one roof, this is the social hub. This is where life happens. Weddings, funerals, daily chores, gossip. It all takes place in the courtyard.
And it's not just for hanging out. It's a climate device. This is where it gets really clever.
Absolutely. This is where the term biophilic design comes in, even though they wouldn't have called it that. The courtyard provides light and ventilation to all the surrounding rooms. More importantly, it allows hot air to rise, what we call the stack effect.
So it creates its own wind.
Essentially, yes. As the hot air rises out of the open courtyard, it creates a pressure difference that draws cooler air in from the side rooms and lower vents. It's a natural ventilation system.
And the sources also mentioned the thick brick walls.
Thermal mass, that's the other key element. Think of the brick as a battery for heat. During the scorching Lahore summer, when it can get well over 40 degrees Celsius, the thick walls absorb the heat all day long, preventing it from reaching the interior rooms. Then at night, when the air is cooler, they slowly release that stored heat.
So it keeps the inside cool in the summer and warm in the winter without any electricity.
Precisely. And they would enhance this effect with fountains and greenery in the courtyard to create a microclimate. The evaporation from the water and plants would cool the air even further. It's brilliant, sustainable engineering that predates the green movement by centuries.
Another feature the sources highlight is the Yaroka. I see these in photos, and they are absolutely stunning. These projecting wooden balconies, intricately carved.
They are beautiful, often carved from deodar wood, which is a type of cedar that's naturally resistant to termites. But again, look at the anthropology. What is the function beyond just being beautiful?
The source says it allowed women to observe street life without being seen.
Exactly. It's a device of social regulation. In a conservative society where purdah, the practice of gender segregation, was the norm, the taroka was a critical piece of architecture. It allowed women to participate in the visual and auditory life of the city, to see the processions, the vendors, the daily drama, while maintaining their privacy and adhering to social norms.
So it's a filter between the public male world of the street and the private female world of the home.
It's a one-way mirror, architecturally speaking. It gave women a view of the world they were otherwise restricted from entering freely. The architecture is literally enforcing or maybe enabling the social rules.
And the study we have mentions a few different types, like the Lal Haveli and No-Win Haveli. It seemed they all had to fit into these really irregular street patterns.
Yes, that's another key difference from, say, a planned suburban neighborhood. The walled city grew organically over centuries. The streets are narrow, they twist and turn, so the Havelis had to adapt. You don't get perfect rectangular plots. The buildings have an organic interaction with the space around them. One Haveli might be long and thin, another might be L-shaped to fit around a corner. They are bespoke solutions to their specific location.
It all sounds so thoughtful and functional. But then we have this case study of the Pirzada Mansion, which seems to represent a transition and not a happy one.
No. The Pirzada Mansion is a fascinating and tragic bridge between the old world and the new. It's not in the walled city proper, it's on Mall Road.
Which was the British area, right? The colonial center.
Exactly. Mall Road represents the British colonial period. The Pirzada Mansion was built much later, around the 1930s, so spatially and architecturally, it's a fusion. You see the traditional elements that still make sense in Lahore's climate verandas for shade, high ceilings to let hot air rise, separate servant quarters, but then you see these very British influences creeping in. Fireplaces,
Fireplaces in Lahore, I mean, I know it gets chilly in the winter, but it's famous for its heat. Doesn't it get up to 45, even 50 degrees Celsius?
It does. But the fireplace wasn't just for heat, it was a status symbol. It was very English. It showed you were modern, that you had adopted colonial tastes. You also see wooden staircases instead of stone, and dedicated drawing rooms meant for a different kind of socializing cocktail hours and formal receptions, rather than sitting on cushions on the floor in the courtyard.
But the story of the Prasada Mansion isn't a happy one. The source we have calls it a tragedy of decline.
It is a classic textbook example of what's happening to heritage across the region. The source uses the term spatial structural analysis, which is a fancy way of saying they looked at how the building space has been changed, and it's been completely swallowed by commercial encroachment.
The report said shops have been built literally into the facade, like barnacles on a whale.
That's a good image, yes. Imagine having a beautiful front porch with carved columns, and someone just pours concrete and builds a mobile phone repair shop right on top of it. They block the light, they block the ventilation. The grandeur is still there, but it's hidden behind a mess of billboards and tangled electrical wires.
It's a victim of neglect, inheritance disputes, and the simple fact that the land is worth more commercially than the history is worth culturally.
The commercial objective overrides the heritage. That's the phrase the study uses. You have this carefully designed machine for living, the ventilation, the light, the social spaces, and you just slap a billboard over the air intake and board up a window to hang a sign.
It suffocates the building.
It suffocates the building.
Yeah.
And when a building suffocates, it begins to die. And as our next set of sources suggest, when a building dies, sometimes things start living in the carcass.
Okay, turning the lights down a bit, because this is the part of the deep dive that genuinely kept me up last night. We have these accounts, some from folklore, some from personal memoirs, about what happens when these Havelis are left to rot. When buildings are left to rot, stories start to fill the cracks.
And this is where we move from architectural history into folklore and urban legend. But I think it's important to treat these stories as part of the heritage. They tell us how the community processes trauma, memory, and decay. They're another layer of the building story.
Okay, story number one. The Now Nihal Singh Haveli. Now, this place is actually a functioning school for girls today, the Victoria Girls High School.
Which is an irony in itself, isn't it? A place of such dark history now filled with the laughter of children. It's an attempt at adaptive reuse, which we'll get to later.
To the context, it was built by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the founder of the Sikh Empire, for his grandson, Now Nihal Singh. It's enormous, 40 rooms, and it has this stunning Rangma Hall, the Palace of Colors, which is covered in frescoes and mirrors. But the history is just bloody.
The Sikh era, particularly after Ranjit Singh's death, was incredibly tumultuous, full of political intrigue, assassinations, betrayal. Now Nihal Singh himself died very young, just 19 years old. A stone gate collapsed on him as he was returning from his father's cremation.
Accidentally? The sources put big quotation marks around that.
Well, the historical sources are full of controversy. Was it tragic accident? Or was it the Dogra treachery? The Dogra faction at court were his political rivals. It was all very suspicious, and to make it worse, his young wife died in childbirth shortly after, and there were rumors of poisoning or even black magic.
So you have this backdrop of betrayal and potential black magic. And the story we have is from a former student of the school recounting the tale of a girl named Mom.
The forbidden room trope. It's a classic for a reason.
It really is. In the school, the Rangma Hall is kept locked. It's forbidden. The students are told it's for preservation, but of course the rumor is that it's haunted. So Maham, after an exam, on a dare or maybe just out of curiosity, decides to just check it out. She's not even scared. She thinks the ghost stories are just to keep kids out. She finds the door, unlatches it.
A fatal mistake, according to the narrative.
She goes in, and the source says the whole school heard a loud, shrill shriek. They find her on the floor of the Rangma Hall, unconscious.
And the aftermath is what's so disturbing. It wasn't a jump scare where she just died of fright.
No, it was much slower and stranger. She didn't die immediately. When she woke up, she couldn't speak. The source describes it as throttled sounds, like there's a physical lump in her throat she couldn't get past. She was sent home, and she died 3 weeks later in her sleep.
And what's fascinating here is the local interpretation. The locals don't just say, it's a ghost. They say the magic of the Dogra treachery still lingers in that room. They connect the supernatural event directly back to the specific historical political trauma of the Sikh era. The building is remembering the betrayal.
It's like the treachery itself is a radioactive isotope that just doesn't decay. It's still active in the walls. It's not the ghost of a person, it's the ghost of an event.
Precisely. The building is a vessel for that unresolved history.
Okay, next one. This one, Gobin Niwas. This one hit me hard because it's not just about ghosts, it's about lost knowledge. This was owned by a man named Gobin Ram, a wealthy Hindu lawyer. It was a masterpiece on Fort Road.
And the haunting here, according to the folklore, involves chalawas, which are a kind of trickster spirit or shapeshifter in South Asian lore.
They were rumored to be in the 10 ground floor rooms. And there are all these fantastic stories of underground tunnels and a takana or basement that was guarded by 2 snakes, 2 nags. But the real horror story for me was the library.
The tragedy of knowledge. This is a common story from partition.
Gobind Ram and his family had to flee during the partition of India in 1947. They had to leave everything behind. And he left a massive, magnificent library. And the source says the new occupants who were allotted the house, they didn't know the value. They saw them as just old books. They sold the entire priceless collection for 17,000 rupees as waste paper.
That is a different kind of haunting, isn't it? The violent erasure of culture. Imagine the collective wisdom of generations, rare manuscripts, first editions, just being sold by the kilogram to wrap street food. It's a devastating loss.
And then the gold. This sounds like something out of an adventure movie. Years later, some of Gobind Ram's family members came back to Lahore, maybe incognito, just visiting. And they went to the house and asked the current owners for permission to extract the old iron nails from the walls.
And the occupants let them.
Apparently. They must have thought, what a strange request. They're just old iron nails. Who cares? Turns out, Gobind Ram, knowing he might have to flee, had cast the nails in solid gold and then painted them black to hide his wealth in plain sight.
Wow, that is a phenomenal detail. It speaks to the desperation and the ingenuity of the time, hiding your life savings in the very structure of your home, hoping against hope to one day return.
And never doing so.
And never doing so. That is the tragedy of partition encapsulated in a single gold nail painted black.
The third story is the Peacock Haveli, in a place called Tehsil Bazaar. This one feels like something straight out of a Gothic novel. You have this abandoned, decaying Haveli where the only residents are peacocks that roam on the roof, screaming.
Peacocks have a very distinct cry. It's not a pleasant bird song. It really does sound like a human screaming or a baby crying. It adds a very specific auditory layer to the fear.
And the owner was a man nicknamed Mama. He was an agnostic, a skeptic. He bought the house cheap because of the rumors, and he refused to believe it was haunted.
The rational man in an irrational world. A classic horror setup.
He was warned. A local seer, or holy man, told him a jinn possessed the house and that it would kill any of his male offspring. Mama laughed it off and moved in with his 7 sons. And the pattern, it's just chilling. His 7 sons died one by one, and the source notes they died each year right after the festival of Eid al-Adha.
The festival of sacrifice.
Exactly. I mean, the symbolism is just overwhelming. And now the story goes, the house just sits there. Thick dust on everything, the furniture left exactly as it was, and just the peacocks crying on the roof.
That image, the lost furniture, is a recurring theme in partition stories and these ghost stories from the region. The house is waiting for owners who will never come back. The ghost story just fills the vacuum left by the human tragedy. It's almost easier to say a jinn killed them than to face the randomness of death or disease or the pain of history.
And finally, we have a place our source just calls the Whispering Haveli. The writing for this one was intense, very atmospheric. It reads like a piece of horror fiction. The forest died long ago. The soil is soaked in secrets.
This source seems to be tapping into the fear of the void. It describes a master of the house that lives in the cellar.
Rooms that aren't on any map. That line gave me shivers.
It interprets the architecture itself as a trap, a labyrinth. We talked earlier about the inward-looking design being about privacy and creating a sanctuary, but in this horror context, inward-looking becomes no way out.
The source has a line, the house is closing its eyes.
Exactly. It's the dark flip side of the sanctuary. A sanctuary keeps the world out, but a prison keeps you in. And these stories suggest that for some people or some entities, these Havelis became prisons, prisons of trauma, of curses, or of literal malevolent entities. It's the ultimate expression of that fear of being trapped in these decaying, labyrinthine structures.
So, bringing us back to reality, if we can even call it that, after those stories, why is this happening? Why are these incredible, potentially haunted architectural masterpieces just crumbling?
Well, it's the crisis of conservation. We touched on it with the Pirzada Mansion, but it's a systemic problem. It's a mix of complex factors. First, and perhaps most significant, are the inheritance laws.
How so? That seems like a strange place to start.
Well, a man builds a Haveli. He has 4 sons. He dies, and the Haveli is split 4 ways. Each of those sons has 3 or 4 children. A generation later, you have 12 to 16 owners. A generation after that, you might have 50 people who all own a tiny fraction of one Haveli.
So no one person has the responsibility or the money to fix the roof.
Precisely. No one wants to pay the massive cost for the maintenance and upkeep, but everyone wants their cut if the property is sold. So it just sits in limbo, it rots, it's the tragedy of the commons, but it's a living room.
Wow, okay, that makes sense.
Then you have the pressures of urbanization. The land in the walled city is incredibly valuable. A developer can buy a crumbling Haveli, tear it down, and build a multi-story commercial plaza that makes them a lot of money. An old, crumbling brick house just eats money in taxes and repairs.
And the source mentioned a simple lack of awareness. People painting over priceless frescoes with cement.
Or selling intricately carved wooden doors for scrap. It's a loss of cultural memory. People forget why these things are valuable. They just see old wood and old brick. They need a new kitchen more than they need a 200-year-old mural on their wall. It's a practical, if tragic, decision for them.
But it's not all doom and gloom. The sources do say there are efforts to save them.
Yes, absolutely. The Walled City of Lahore Authority, or WCLA, is doing some significant work. They've restored the picture wall in the Lahore Fort, which is the world's largest mural wall. It's an incredible project. And there is a growing move toward adaptive reuse.
Which means finding new purposes for old buildings, like the school.
Exactly like the now Nihal Singh Haveli being a school. Yes, it has some chilling ghost stories attached to it, but the very fact that it is being used means the roof is being fixed, the walls are being maintained, it's being kept alive. The Barood Khana Haveli is another success story. It's now used as a venue for cultural events, weddings, concerts.
So if you use it, you don't lose it, even if you have to share it with a few resident spirits.
Better to be haunted and standing than exorcised and demolished. It's about finding a balance between preservation and practical modern life.
A very fair point. Now, for our listeners who are feeling brave, and I mean really brave after all that, we have a must-see list from our travel sources. A quick guide if you ever find yourself in Lahore.
Proceed with caution and with respect.
Number 1, Haveli Now Nihal Singh. For the frescoes alone, it's worth it.
Good.
But you have to get permission since it's an active school.
And, perhaps avoid the Rang Mahal if you're of a superstitious disposition. Don't be a Maham.
Definitely. Number 2, Mubarak Haveli. This one is recommended for its sheer scale. It has interconnected courtyards that seem to go on forever. You get a real sense of the joint family system there. Number 3, the Havelis in the Chunamandi area. The source says this gives you a lived-in experience. You can see how the architecture interacts with the organic, chaotic street life.
And a crucial tip from the conservationists, do not touch the frescoes.
Why? Is it just about them being fragile?
It's the chemistry. The oils and acids on your skin are incredibly damaging to the delicate pigments over time. And no flash photography.
Right. The light damage is cumulative. Every flash is like a tiny bit of sandpaper on the image.
It is. Preserve the pigment for the next generation. And practically speaking, the streets are a maze. Hire a local guide. You will get lost, and that's the best way to see things anyway.
And go in the winter, October to March, unless you want to personally experience that biophilic cooling system being put to the test in 45-degree heat.
Which I do not recommend. It works, but you don't need to stress test it yourself.
So to wrap this all up, we've gone from the military might of the fort with its elephant gates and bastions to the intimate, whispering, and sometimes screaming corridors of the Havelis.
It's a journey through the psychology of a city. The fort is the ego, the grand projection of strength and power to the outside world. The Havelis are the id, the private, hidden, complex, and sometimes dark interior world.
That is deep. I like that.
These buildings are silent yet profoundly eloquent storytellers. They hold the trauma of partition. They hold the glory of the Sikh and Mughal empires. And they hold the quiet, daily lives of countless people who just wanted to stay cool in the summer and keep their families safe.
And whether you believe in the master of the house in the cellar, or the gold nails painted black, or just the very real tragedy of a library sold for scrap, these walls are alive. They have memory.
And that leads us to a difficult and I think final question. If a building truly remembers everything that happened inside it, the wars, the betrayals, the births, the deaths, is it the ghosts that are haunting the house? Or is it history itself that we are actually afraid to face?
Are we scared of a spirit? Or are we scared of what we did to each other inside those walls?
That's the question the walled city asks you every time you step into one of its shadows.
Something to think about tonight. Maybe leave a light on. Stay curious, stay respectful, And if you go, watch out for the peacocks.